Hey, what is up guys, Merganman4 here, and today I am finally going to be caught up on my classic series reviews. As of my recording this, the next classic set has yet to be announced. Hopefully it will be soon, but I've got to admit it's kind of a good feeling to finally be caught up on these. Today I'm going to be taking a look at what could probably be described as the end to Doctor Who's golden age. And we're also going to be bidding a not quite so final farewell to one of the show's most popular companions of all time. So with that, let's dive into Season 14. Since Tom Baker's second story, producer Philip Hinchcliffe and script editor Robert Holmes redefined Doctor Who, and with seasons 13 and 14 brought the show to heights it had never before seen, and wouldn't again until over 30 years later. Under them, Who was a massive hit, and combined with the incredible Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen, their era became set in stone as the definitive Doctor Who. But all good things must come to an end, and season 14 marked the last regular appearance of Sarah Jane Smith, although she would make numerous reappearances in years to come, as well as the final story of the season, marking the last for Philip Hinchcliffe as producer and Robert Holmes as script editor, although Holmes continued providing scripts for the show until his death. But they made sure to go out with a bang, as season 14 is now fondly remembered as among the best the show has to offer in its 60-odd year history. And with that, why don't we dive right in with an adventure set in 15th century Italy. The Masque of Mandragora is one of just a handful of Fourth Doctor stories set in Earth's history, making it a bit of an oddity of the era. Unfortunately though, aside from the setting, there's nothing about the story that really stands out to me. The cult is creepy, it's got a couple of good cliffhangers, but beyond that, it just doesn't really have anything that engages me. That's not to say it's boring per se, it's a fun enough way to spend 90 minutes, but it's easily the weakest of the season. And that's emphasized by the fact that that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I'd like to give this story more, but I really can't justify anything higher than a 6.5 out of 10. This is a special story. The end for Sarah Jane's travels with the Doctor, and therefore the end of perhaps the most successful companion-Doctor pairing we've ever gotten. The story itself isn't directly connected to her departure, but nonetheless, it's an entertaining one for her to end on. The eponymous hand makes for a great and creepy mystery, and the first couple of episodes especially build up a strong atmosphere. The nuclear facility is a great setting in particular. By episode 3 though, Eldrad has restored herself, and it's here that the mystery and atmosphere begin to die down until we eventually visit Eldrad's home planet, and the story unfortunately continues to dip. It never gets bad, but there's a definite decline in quality between episode 1 and episode 4, which is a shame. However, the final part is propped up by the ending, the wonderfully played goodbye between the Doctor and Sarah. Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen are both utterly superb, and their performances are pitch perfect. It's a very bittersweet ending to one of the best pairings that the show has ever offered us. So, while the story may have dipped, it certainly ends on a high. All in all, it's far from perfect, but it's got some great stuff and makes for a very entertaining time. So I'm going to give The Hand of Fear a 7.5 out of 10. The Deadly Assassin is our first out-and-out classic of the season, and it certainly won't be the last. This story is notable for establishing most of the Time Lord lore that we now take for granted. Rassilon, the Eye of Harmony, the Matrix, the regeneration limit, heck, even the decorative collars that have become inseparable from the image of the Time Lords. While hailed as a classic now, it's no surprise that fandom actually hated it at the time. We're ever so fussy about change, aren't we? And the lore implications aren't the only things of note in this story. This is the first and so far only TV story in all of Who's history to not only lack a companion, but even a companion surrogate, a la characters like Astrid Peth or Craig Owens. And for the cherry on top, this story marked the return of the Master for the first time since Roger Delgado's unfortunate passing, now in a dying, decayed state. So, What do I make of all this? Because it's a lot to unpack. Well, it's really rather good, isn't it? It's a fascinating exploration of Time Lord society, and the Matrix is a superb idea, constantly shifting and unpredictable. Despite it not being real, the threat doesn't diminish. In fact, it feels more brutal and real than ever. Goth is a great adversary for the Doctor, and it's great to have the Master lurking in the background until the final episode. If only the mask looked a bit less, well, mask-like. And Tom Baker really does hold his own here. While I'm not sure if it would work to have him solo all the time, which was actually what Tom Baker wanted, it definitely works this once. All in all, a very strong story, and it's easy to see why it has the reputation it does. An easy 8.5 out of 10 from me. We've said goodbye to Sarah, we've had the Doctor on his own. Now it's time for a brand new companion in the form of Leela, a savage from the tribe of the 17. And not only does the Face of Evil bring us a new companion, it's fascinating for being one of the only adventures to revolve around the consequences of the Doctor's past actions, albeit ones that happened off-screen. It plays out wonderfully with a great build-up, as those who see the Doctor recognize him as the Evil One. We even get an incredible cliffhanger where the Doctor discovers his face carved into a mountainside. Similar to the Hand of Fear, though, the mystery is definitely more interesting than the answer. Although unlike the former, this story does a better job at maintaining interest, especially with another whopper of a cliffhanger as the mad computer Zoannon has an identity crisis.
Who am I? Who am I?
Who am I indeed? But on the whole, this story has some great atmosphere, strong humor. Indeed, this may be one of Tom Baker's funniest and finest performances, in my opinion. And Leela proves to be a fascinating choice for companion, different from anyone that came before, intelligent but uneducated, and with no qualms about using violence against her enemies. On the whole, The Face of Evil is quite a strong story, and certainly a memorable one, so I'm going to be giving it an 8 out of 10. The second story in a row from writer Chris Boucher, it's 2 for 2 as he delivers another great adventure. The Doctor and Leela continue to be a great pairing here, with their teacher-student style relationship bringing lots of charm. We also get a great setting and cast of characters for our leads to bounce off of, and it's a slice of this futuristic society that's tons of fun to explore. Each character feels very distinctive. Even certain robots have their own personalities, so the stakes feel very real. The first couple episodes have a great murder mystery vibe, before switching to a tense base under siege as the surviving crew members try to escape the clutches of the deadly robots while trapped on their sand mine. Simultaneously terrifying and tons of fun, it's easy to see why The Robots of Death has been deemed a classic by fandom, so there's no question it's worthy of at least an 8.5 out of 10. The Talons of Weng-Chiang, simply put, is an iconic story. Need I say more? Yeah, I probably should, shouldn't I? Well, this is an example of where everyone's firing on all cylinders, and you can tell. Tom Baker and Louise Jameson play wonderfully off the gothic Victorian atmosphere, and with the sole exception of the infamous rat, classic Who has rarely had such good production values. The guest characters are superb too. Jago and Lightfoot make an electric pairing, even if they only get together in the last third. John Bennett puts in a very nuanced performance as Li Sen-Cheng, and it's a complex character who is eminently fascinating to watch. However, I say all this in spite of the inexcusable usage of yellowface, which I'm not trying to defend in any way. I might enjoy the end results, but I don't approve whatsoever of the method of getting there. And with that out of the way, we also have our main villain in the form of Magnus Greel, a war criminal from the future, and Michael Spice puts in a wonderfully demented performance as this broken, desperate man. He's a menacing background threat in the earlier episodes, and just as dangerous when he comes to the forefront later. The Talons of Weng-Chiang is a superb 6-episode ride, totally justifying its length, and going from strength to strength to strength without even breaking a sweat. What a fantastic story for the Hinchcliffe and Holmes era to end on. Certainly one of the best stories of the Tom Baker era, and perhaps even the classic series as a whole. Great stuff, easily deserving of a 9 out of 10. And that wraps up Season 14, one of the most iconic seasons in the show's history, and the end of the classic era's golden age. We say goodbye to the team of Hinchcliffe and Holmes, to the massively popular TARDIS team of 4 and Sarah Jane, and say hello to the savage Leela. Season 14 is definitely a wild ride, and one that largely lives up to its reputation, getting better and better as the season goes on until the era ends with a massive bang. And while it's sad to say goodbye to Sarah, it's great to say hello to Leela here, who's fantastic throughout and never ceases to be a fascinating, fresh take on the role of the companion in this season. And what's even more impressive is, even the worst of the 6 stories is still just fine, a sign of a strong season if I ever saw one. Season 14 looks great, sounds great, has great performances, great writing. It's, quite simply, great in every sense of the word. And now, as is usual in the wrap-up of my reviews, I'm going to take a look at some rankings comparing the stories of Season 14 with each other, and then with the other seasons I've reviewed so far. So when it comes to Season 14, the top story is, of course, The Talons of Weng-Chiang, with a 9 out of 10, followed by The Robots of Death and The Deadly Assassin, both with 8.5s out of 10, The Face of Evil with 8 out of 10, The Hand of Fear with 7.5 out of 10, and finally, The Masque of Mandragora with 6.5 out of 10. Altogether, the average score for Season 14 comes to 8 out of 10. However, despite all the good in it, Season 14 can't quite top Season 26, but it still comes in at a respectable second. It also brings our 70s average up to 7.69 out of 10, with Tom Baker's average going up to 7.56 out of 10. Surprisingly though, he still remains at 4th out of 5th. I really would have thought Season 14 would have brought him higher in the list. As for the writers of Season 14, Robert Holmes remains in 8th place, though his score increases to an 8.42 out of 10. Chris Boucher is just behind him in 9th, with an average of 8.25 out of 10. Bob Baker and Dave Martin are in 17th, with a 7.33 out of 10. And finally, we have Louis Marks, who comes in 20th, with a 6.5 out of 10. But when it comes to producers, Philip Hinchcliffe gets a big boost, leaping from last place to 1st, with a new average of 7.65 out of 10. And his partner in crime, Robert Holmes, goes up to 3rd in our script editor list, with an average of 7.64 out of 10. For Season 14's directors, David Maloney is top dog in 6th, with an average of 8.25 out of 10, followed by Pennant Roberts in 7th with an 8 out of 10, Rodney Bennett in 11th with a 7.5 out of 10, Lenny Main just below him in 13th, also with a 7.5 out of 10, and finally, Michael E. Bryant in 16th with a slightly improved score of a 7 out of 10. Unfortunately, when it comes to premieres, The Masque of Mandragora comes in at 2nd last place, dropping the premiere average ever so slightly to a 7.2. But it makes up for it with The Talons of Weng-Chiang, which snags the 2nd best placement from Survival, and brings the finale average up to 6.6 out of 10. Season 14 also manages to knock 2 Season 26 stories out of the top 10, with The Talons of Weng-Chiang and The Robots of Death now in 6th and 9th place respectively. Unfortunately, however, Season 14 doesn't quite manage to escape the bottom 10. The Masque of Mandragora places 32nd overall, 7 spots from the bottom. The remaining stories are placed as follows. The Deadly Assassin just misses out on the top 10, placing in 12th. The Face of Evil places in 14th. And finally, The Hand of Fear places 26th out of 38 total. And that's that. My review of Season 14 is complete. It's easy to see why it has such a strong reputation and has struck a chord with so many. And with this in Season 12, we just have Season 13 left to complete the golden age of the show. But I look forward to what other seasons the collection has in store next. But with that, I hope you enjoyed this review, and please leave your thoughts on Season 14 down below. Mergaman4, over and out, and I'll see you guys later.